Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy any investment based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Hello and welcome to the Saturday Brunch. I'm Phil Carroll, and today we're joined by Colin Bird, Executive Chairman of Kendrick Resources, and also Martyn Churchouse, Senior Technical Driver to the board. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome. Thank you. Nice to talk to you, Phil. Nice to talk to you, Kevin.
Hi, Phil. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Martyn. Yeah. So obviously just recently there was an announcement regarding an exploration update. Should we go through this? Where do you want to start?
Let's kick off with what Kendrick was all about. When we floated, and it was not a difficult. It was a difficult flotation, and done in difficult times with a portfolio which needed some understanding and a requirement to keep the projects in good standing. So a combination of time and the need to keep the projects in good standing meant we had to dig deep in our own pockets, and we got the company listed, and we're very pleased about that, of course. Like all IPOs, you present to the market a portfolio of assets, and as life goes along, some of those assets weaken, some of those assets strengthen, new opportunities are sought, and presence on the ground brings opportunities. Martyn and I got together some months ago, and Martyn is, I think that's probably the best description, technical driver, management driver of this company. And Martyn has been very actively involved in all the aspects of getting a new listing into an operating company. So maybe, Martyn, you can give us where we were and where we are.
Sure.
Dissertation.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Colin. Yeah. The company, if you take a sort of a high-level view, we've got projects across 3 countries, Norway, Sweden and Finland, and 3 commodities, nickel, copper and vanadium. When the company listed, it inherited a substantial database that included a big, well-maintained national archive of data, as well as all the data that came with the acquisition. Well, it needed to be reviewed and priorities set, and that's required 5 people full time for the last few months, trawling through all this information, putting it all into a format that we can use, and also coming up with some very interesting things. Taking a sort of a global view of the assets and the licenses sort of in the Kendrick portfolio. If we start with the nickel copper, we've got one project, Espadana, that is well advanced. Further drilling will be done to expand the resource, and hopefully, potentially, we're looking at a centralized hub for future processing from multiple sites, depending on that drilling. There are 2 other nickel copper projects, also Norway-based. Both are much earlier stage programs. But I think from the point of view of sort of Kendrick and for the shareholders' benefit, these nickel copper projects are particularly well suited to our small scale mining philosophy. And with the current demand for nickel, and of course the healthy price and the anticipated rise in demand for copper, this gives us a lot of encouragement to push for the development of mining operations for some of these nickel copper assets. The vanadium projects that we have, which are spread across Sweden and Finland, they're much bigger in terms of tonnage. And it's a different dynamic as well in terms of demand and economics. The potential with the vanadium is, as you'd expect, it's basically going to be driven by sort of battery technology advancement and specifically the vanadium redox flow system. And that, to some extent, is determining or guiding our sort of exploration strategy. We can talk later if we've got time about the sort of the pros and cons of redox flow. But what we've done is we've effectively sort of adopted more of a medium to long-term view for the vanadium projects that are sort of dictated by technological advances, which are happening all the time, and also governments and battery manufacturers committing to the redox flow technology. So what we're doing with the vanadium is we're steadily advancing the projects. so that we'll be well positioned to meet future demand for redox flow when it happens.
Yeah.
And if governments are serious about power independence and the need to store off-peak power, then there's a real future for vanadium in our opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this in the past with Colin about the necessity and importance of vanadium redox, or as you mentioned. So, I mean, there was an update, obviously, in the last RNS that talked about progress to a certain extent. I believe there was a 1-ton met sample from the Arizjoki vanadium copper project that was being shipped to the UK. And that's presumably work that's happened within the near term that it's going to be analysed, right?
Yeah, Arizjoki is one of the vanadium projects that we've got. At the moment, there's just over 44 million tonnes of inferred resource and just over 100,000 tonnes of vanadium pentoxide metal. We've got 4 contiguous licenses, and we've applied for 2 more. We've lodged applications. The bulk of that 44 million tonnes is actually largely confined to one of the 4 licenses, the 4 original licenses. And we've got really obvious extensions to all the large-scale mag anomaly that define that original existing resource, and it covers the remaining 3 licenses. So we are very confident of a meaningful increase in the resource at Arizjoki. And also, we've got copper present as well. That's part of the reason for picking up these other 2 licenses, because we did, with our review that we were doing, we identified some significant copper anomalism in soils in historic data. So part of the reason for getting the MET test work done early is because we want to see, how we can treat material that's containing both the nickel and the copper. That's coming across to the UK, and when it gets here, we'll start doing LIMS test work and things on that. That's really exciting, and we're confident of being in a position later this year when, particularly in Sweden, most of the exploration is done during the winter when the ground is hard and you do less damage. So hopefully we will get all of the soil geochem work done, get a whole bunch more anomalies together that we can then overlay on the airborne geophysics data that we have, the mag data, and then we can start to increase that resource significantly with some drilling. So that's moving ahead nicely. The other 2 vanadium projects, Kotalainen and Kauhajoki, both of them in Finland. There's work ongoing there. Kotalainen, it's much lower, it's lower grade, much larger, but it's lower grade. There's 116 million tonnes of resource, about 130,000 tonnes of vanadium pentoxide. Both of those, we've now done all of our background work, and it's a case of deciding how we progress those. And then there's 4 smaller early stage projects in central Sweden. They've all got significant anomalies associated with them. Detailed review is about 90% complete, so results are sufficiently encouraging to warrant further detailed follow-up there as well. We're quietly building quite a robust vanadium package in the company.
But the short term, Martyn, you're really going to be targeting the nickel, in inverted commas, short term. That is going to be the main financial driver in the next 12 to 24 months. Is that fair to say?
The thing with the nickel is with the vanadium is what we want to make sure is that we're ready for that medium to long term potential that's offered by the metal. But in terms of our strategy, we want to make sure that whilst we're advancing everything, we're not overcommitting on the budget. So that's with regard to vanadium. With regard to the nickel, as I said, we think it's well suited to smaller scale operations and therefore potentially a shorter lead time to production and cash flow. So yes, in a nutshell, in the short term, the emphasis is on the nickel copper, and specifically, I would say at this point, the Norwegian project at Espedalen. It's about 170 kilometers north of Oslo. We've got 3 primary targets and about another 10 untested prospects. Resource-wise, Stormira, there's just over 1 million tonnes at 1% nickel, 0.42 copper and 0.04 cobalt. And then Dalen has got 7.8 million tonnes at lower grade nickel, copper and cobalt. What's quite exciting is we revisited the core and we found with the aid of some external expertise, we found significant areas of mineralization in the core that had either not been identified and or hadn't been sampled and assayed. So that work is being done as we speak. So potentially we're going to get significantly wider package widths and a change in the geological model and a bigger resource.
Yeah, if I can just chip in there. I was saying this morning, Martyn, I was a bunch of investors who were interested in where we're at, that, the work what was done, and you make the comment that you reckon we've done more work in 6 months than others done in 10 years. But when they were doing these resource estimations, Phil, Kevin, that you were looking at 6,500, maybe 8,000 if you were lucky, nickel. So they were driven towards this high grade small deposit. When you're talking 20, 21,000, 22,000 and an absolute shortage of sulfide nickel, then of course, these projects in the pound seats. And so cutoff is a different animal altogether. And geologists, I was going to be unkind to geologists then, I better not do that. But people being people,
humans
being human beings, would look at a data package and say, that won't fit, that won't fit, that won't fit. If they see numbers like 0.4, 0.6 repeated over great lengths. But, in one of the projects there, you're talking about, I think, 115 meters at about 0.37 and about, and with associated copper. All of a sudden, that's good stuff. And Martyn, I was also saying that, the Swedes invented this remote mining where you go in, you take your first lift, you bolt the roof, you take that bench forward 2 or 3 meters deep. When it's 70 meters in front, you start your second bench. When that's, and then your third bench and your fourth bench with the roof nicely bolted. And these mines are highly productive with big load ore dumpers, which are driven remotely. And it's right up Scandinavia's mining street, so to speak. Small teams, high productivity. So we are in the right spot, and that with a data bank. I'm me, Martyn, but I made the statement, and so I'll make it again. If you had to start drilling to drill that lot, it'd take you probably $7 million and 2 years with a data package which is unprocessed.
Yeah, and I think that's very fair. The other thing, just to re-emphasize your point there, we inherited an engineering study that was done for Espadalen in 2018. So today nickel 22,800. In 2018, it was 12,000. Copper was 5,900, and it's whatever it is, 700-800 today. And because of the price at the time, this study was done on a very small scale operation, producing say 100,000 ton a year, and it still ended up with an IRR of 220% and an NPV of 44 million and a 3-year life of mine. So, it sort of puts into context the opportunity that we have here. And as Colin says, particularly in a country which is extraordinarily efficient in its mining capabilities and things. We've got opportunities to get something going here, which, can be very neat and very efficient and unobtrusive.
So, Colin, just from an investment point of view, obviously, because that's what people are thinking about. The nickel on its own, forget about the vanadium for now. The vanadium's a free hit, and it's going to come in the more medium term. But the nickel, what sort of size of production is likely if you had to make a sort of guesstimate? And based on the fact that the share price is now a third of what it was when it was IPO'd, and the company has a market cap of £2.75 million, is the nickel alone, in your eyes, worth significantly more than this current market capitalization?
Oh, absolutely. We use the word, because we're in the business, and we use it like people use words when they're in the business. But I don't think it's commonly realized that laterites are so difficult, Kevin, to work. Of the known nickel resources in the world now, I think close to 70% are in the category of oxide laterites, and they're so difficult. They've tested the likes of Rio Tinto, they've tested the likes of BHP, and projects have been dumped because they're so technically, metallurgically, processing-wise difficult. These are bog standard sulfides where you just crush, grind, float, dry, and send off the concentrate and there's no shortage of concentrating capacity in Europe. So they're immediate. I mean, we can't, if you're running a junior mining company, a developing mining company, you've got to, first of all, do the best for the package, the best for the portfolio, the best for the company. But the guys who we're working for are the shareholders, and they need immediacy. So what have you got when you look at the company? You've got the immediacy. We can bring it in. I don't know if there's such a word, by the way, but I'm using it. You've got the, that it's round the corner, so to speak, to bring into production, cash flow. Because I personally believe anybody who wants to say these times might change next month or early next year, they may be right, they may be wrong, but you can't be, in my estimation, you can't beat some cash flow in the company now. So to bring these into production whilst the Vanadium story develops is no bad thing. And Martyn's already working on optimization. He knows he can produce that concentrate, which in our prospectus we say, put things in prospectus that you can't endorse. We're producing one of the best, if not the best, vanadium magnetite concentrate in the world. Martyn's now working on saying his plan is, can we in actual fact increase the recovery, more of it, from a ton of ore, and at the same time maintain the quality. And of course, he's looking into the production of electrolyte, because what we're seeing now, Kevin, Phil, is we're seeing that, the middleman's cut out. The end user is going straight to the producer because price is important, but the stability of supply is so much more important. So look at our company. There it is, bang in the middle of Europe, where all the action is in this particular
that's a key
space.
point. That's a very key point you're making there, because a massive amount of the vanadium in the world is produced, through Russia, through the Chinas, the development there, the mine development there. I think in 2019, China was the world's top vanadium producing country with 40,000 million tons, and then Russia was next, and then South Africa. So just how, other than, I think there's LSE listed Bushveld Minerals and Glencore, is there anyone else, Colin, that we know of that's doing it on the London stock market, could potentially be producing vanadium?
Martyn, I don't think so, to my knowledge. I know that I don't think on the London market, on the ASC market, you've got an ASX market, you've got a company called Neo Metals who've done a joint venture. And of course, there's space for us in that particular space. So you make an interesting point again, is that inside those steel dumps, they've been producing in Sweden for yonks. And inside those dumps that they've got for their steel industry there's stacks and stacks of vanadium, very low grade. And to have primary vanadium mixed with it might be no bad thing. And we're considering options of maybe producing an even higher grade magnetite, and then a vanadium recovery, vanadium pentoxide recovery thereafter. So we're playing many options.
Yeah.
I think then we can be talking to end users because we're in the right place with the right product.
I think there'll be a lithium or Elon Musk style moment that will happen for vanadium one of these days. And I think that's what you're primed for now, aren't you?
Oh, you're so right. I mean, with wind energy, the wind stops, so does you've got to store the energy. With the solar energy, the sun goes out, you've got to store this stuff. And storage, I think, is going to take as much.
It's all about storage, isn't it? It's all about the storage, because a lot of the listeners don't know the usage for the redox flow batteries, but they're generally used in the large scale battery storage systems that store excess energy. So that's very apt at the moment when we've got things like, this whole load shedding going on, and energy blackouts, possibly, potentially through winter going on in the UK. It's very current. So there's a massive demand for that sort of battery storage.
Absolutely. And the more we get onto these renewables, which are weather dependent, the more important it will become. And, it was a boring old metal. Why would you get in vanadium? But, this has actually put it in right bang into the spotlight. But, its boring old use has increased a lot too, because its lightness compared to its strength is a very important feature. And it's being the standard spec now for rebar around the world. Similarly, in electric vehicles, lightness and strength are a good thing as well, because, in the new vehicles that we'll be making. So it doesn't all end up with a redox battery and the dependence on that as well. The general use is the forecasts are all trending in the right direction, very much upwards.
And the vanadium electrolyte storage tanks as well, which help they can be replenished even when the system is supplying power. So there's a massive advantage to this metal, this element.
That's right. Well, and when we got into this space, Martyn, we were aware, quite frankly, we were aware that, in fact, so much so that a new member of our team is from a banking and corporate source. And that we will be able, we will be sort of creating liaisons and more corporate work. It's not as though we like, when you're in the copper space down in Africa there, that, you produce your concentrate and look for somewhere to smelt it, and some major trader will give you some trade finance to assist you. This is totally different, and we look towards making corporate liaisons, corporate ventures, in order to place our material. So we're pretty convinced we're in the right product in the right time. And, the perspective has turned around a bit, because we feel blessed with that nickel. We feel very, very fortunate that, and often when, you start a new IPO with all the best, with the best will in the world, you get your competent person's report, you make your decisions, you have your site visits. But when you get the keys to the door and open a few cupboards, that's when sometimes the skeletons fall out. But this time, it was Pandora, and quite a few nice things dropped out. And it didn't take us long to realise there'd been a nickel assessment in a much different price. And the objectives were totally different to what our objectives are. And that we've got a lot of raw data to work with, which would have cost us a packet. But I think the packet is less important than the time. It might have taken us 2 seasons to generate the raw data package that we're currently working with, Martyn?
Yeah. I think that's very fair comment. I mean, it is I can't overemphasize how much data we accumulated. And of course, again, we're fortunate because places like Sweden and Norway and Finland, they really have maintained all that data in really good condition, and it's readily available. And that alone has saved us a couple of years in terms of work. And it actually enabled us to focus on some of these targets, and so it gave us the confidence to go back in there and commit some of the budget to acquiring a new ground and doing the follow-up probably a lot sooner than we would have otherwise done so.
So on that note, Colin, you raised 3.25 million last May, or this May, so 6 months ago. So you must have a serious amount of that money still left.
That's right. And Martyn stamped his feet and insisted that that's the way forward, because
okay, but what I'm saying is this basically the cash can't be that much different than the market capitalization at the minute without the assets.
Yeah, exactly. But what you've got to, one thing, and I don't want to over-egg it, but you're working in a very different cost structure when you look at Scandinavia to what you and I are used to, Martyn's used to. You'll never get the cost that you probably get in Africa. But we've now, we've got to sort of, all our resources, all our labor and our technical inputs had got to be based on what AIM companies are used to. And so Martyn has been busily team building. And we've got some good names or advising this company, working with this company, which are now what I would call normal salaries, and salaries that we understand on AIM, that they might not understand quite as well in Scandinavia. If you actually look at average cost of labor in that part of the world, average cost of labor in our part of the world, and average cost in Africa, we want to be closer to Africa than we do really, really high pricing that you get in Northern Europe. And Martyn has actually we've collectively put together quite an enviable team. And as I say, with this time going as far as getting a corporate banker type as an advisor and helper, in the knowledge that once we've sorted out some of these process and metallurgical things, that we're going to need partners, we're going to need liaisons, and we want to be talking to end users. We don't want somebody to talk to end users for us if we can talk to them directly ourselves. And that includes the nickel as well as the vanadium.
Yep. So to sum up, basically what we've got here is a company, from what I can read, listed on the main market of the stock market, current market capitalization of 2.7 million, must have a couple of £1 million in cash at least, has nickel assets that should be advancing fairly rapidly because effectively all the drilling was done and all the information was gathered. So you can then use that information to then target the mining. And then you've got already JORC-style reports of 100,000 tons plus of vanadium, and a situation where that obviously is expanding quickly, and also the nickel expanding quickly because the prices have gone up, and therefore it's now economically viable to mine these where it wasn't before.
That's right. Martyn, are you going to respond to that? Because, you're developing the batting order, the league table, and the resource application. How do you feel about that statement?
Yeah, I think that's pretty well put, actually. I mean, the other thing I'd add, of course, is, we were saying that it is expensive place to do business, but on the other hand, you're also dealing with an environment there where you do get to the point where you're starting to develop and build and operate a mine, that you're doing so with a massively reduced labour force, and you're very, very competitive. So yeah, it is more expensive, but you will get to the point where you can do things much more competitively when you get to the mining situation. Yeah, we've got the money there. We're being wise with the treasury that we've got. As Colin says, we've engaged a number of people. We're still using, obviously, Scandinavian expertise, because we'd be crazy not to, particularly when it comes to liaison with various government bodies and things, and also from a technical point of view. But we've got a good spread of expertise now in the team. We are pushing ahead with the development of some of these nickel projects, specifically Espadon at this stage, because that's one that we think we can turn to account the quickest and the easiest. And in the meantime, we'll keep chipping away at the vanadium and continue to build that inventory and get it up to something that's significant. And all it's going to take, to be honest, is because I think governments are coming round to the whole idea that they need to invest seriously in this sort of bulk static storage. But it's a case of the battery manufacturers taking the plunge. And I think they must be getting close to that now.
Very good. Colin Bird and Martyn Churchouse, thanks very much for your time. Thank
you very much. Thanks for giving us the opportunity. We always appreciate it. And I think it'll be a good story to follow. And hopefully the deliverables be towards the end of this year and certainly early next year.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It's definitely highly sold down and a good opportunity. I think another one that's just been sitting there, but you guys have been doing a lot of work in the background. So, yeah, good luck with what you're doing. And, we wait for some tangible results.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
This podcast was brought to you by Roast PR Limited. If you would like to appear on a future episode of The Sunday Roast, please email admin@thesundayroast.net.